welcome back to Twin Chat. I'm Kenan McCumber, mom of two and teacher living in Bend, Oregon.
And hello, I'm Steph Kafori, mom of three, life coach living in Hawaii. We are so excited to have Brinnon Mandel with us today. Welcome, Brinnon.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be chatting with Brinnon about her experience in the Peace Corps and how that led her on this amazing path of public service and global health. And before we launch into Brinnon's story, Kenan, well, first I also want to say that we have known Brinnon since grade school, and we went to rival middle schools and high schools, but we also played on club sports together. So we have this long history of athletics, playing on the same team and then going against each other. And then Kenan and Brinnon went to college together and played basketball. And our beautiful friendship started, 25 years ago and has continued into adulthood. So, Kenan?
Yes, well, Brinnon, we're just so excited to have you with us today. And I just want to reach through the Zoom and give you a big hug. I miss you. But of course, we would love to start with a twin story before we launch into our chat.
Oh, I have so many. It took me like zero point 0.0 seconds to think of twin stories. I have more than one, but I'll share one. I guess it starts with playing sports probably against each other before we started playing together. And I just always remember, I think I was playing midfield most of the time and like trying to play defense against twins. You're like, wait, which one? No, I thought I was guarding her, but why is she over there? Oh my gosh, so it was always chaos trying to play defense against twins. It was like very, very sneaky of you two. But then I think probably the best part about twins is that I got to develop relationships with both of you separately, in addition to having great memories of you together. So going to college with Kenan and playing basketball and dominating or losing every game. And then when I got home from Peace Corps, Kenan was living in San Francisco, but Steph was living in Portland and was such a great resource for me in my reentry back from Peace Corps. So I feel really lucky that I now know both of you as individuals. Although if I get in the same room with both of you and you start laughing, I don't know always who's who.
The twin cackle, as we call it.
Yeah, and then throw in your dad and brother in there, then it's lovely chaos. But that's my twin story. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Brinnon. Well, those memories of those sports days are something that I think have made us all stronger and better human beings today. So we're gonna talk to Brinnon about her experience in the Peace Corps, but I wanted to start this conversation off by talking about ideas and how we make ideas into a reality. And I read this somewhere and I love it, and I can't remember where I read it, but it's this notion that every accomplishment starts with the decision to try. And I think that just like wowed me. It changed my whole perception on things, because I thought, like, if everything starts with just an idea, a thought, right? Like your thought is, I want to go into the Peace Corps, and it's a decision to try. It actually like makes it seem so simple, right? And when you ask yourself a big question like, what do I want? What ideas do I have? And we don't often allow ourselves that kind of deep questioning within our lives, because we kind of sometimes think they're knee-jerk reactions, and something, with big decisions we may pause and like really, write down pros and cons or whatnot. But I want to ask our audience and everyone to really think about asking yourself that question: what ideas do I have? And a powerful question, a powerful exercise that I use in my coaching and I use on myself is, I look at all the stuff that I've already accomplished. So Brinnon, for you, it's like the Peace Corps could be that accomplishment, right? And I look at like my current life and the results that I've created, and I write a list. I write it all out, like, okay, this is what I've done. And these are the thoughts that I had that actually influenced the results that I have in my life. And And it's the awareness and the noticing that every single thing you currently have in your life was once just an idea or a thought. And by listing it out and remembering it, then you actually can go through this process of beginning to see how powerful those ideas and thoughts truly are. So I know that's kind of a like a big picture of sort of this, if you're having a hard time thinking of like, oh, what have I accomplished in my life, or how did that start? It kind of gives you a context of how to sort of look at things in your life and really begin to notice that our ideas and our thoughts are very, very powerful, and they actually can create the results that we want. And is all you have to do is try. So without further ado, Brinnon, I would love for you to share your journey of how you even thought of going into the Peace Corps.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that whole idea of an idea becoming reality and just being something to try out of curiosity or interest or passion or adventure can lead to many other things. So, in college, when I was trying to think about what would come after college, I think there were people who knew either what they had to do to complete or fulfill their degree or graduate school, or had a plan for a long time of what they wanted to do. And I think I felt a little more, not lost, but not able to commit. I didn't want to go to grad school yet because I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't want to go home and kind of settle into a routine back in Portland because I wanted to keep adventuring and trying new things. And so I had been studying international studies and biology with the thought that maybe I would eventually go to medical school or midwifery school or something. I was always interested in health, but more the human side than the science side. Anyway, so I can't remember how, but I had spent junior year abroad in Chile. Kenan may remember. But part of that was my parents encouraged me to study abroad. They felt like it's such a unique time in life, and to go outside of your comfort zone and go somewhere very different and go somewhere far away was invaluable. So I'd say they kind of gave me a shove, and I went very willingly. And I wanted to learn Spanish, and I wanted to go somewhere that no one else was going that I knew of. And so I went to Chile. So that was kind of my first try of like, well, I've never been to South America and I'd like to go check it out. And that kind of gave me, I think, the bug to keep on not traveling for recreation, but sort of working abroad, because I had been doing some community service while I was studying abroad. So when I was a senior in college, I was probably toying with a lot of ideas, but Peace Corps just stuck. It just seemed right. It seemed like the commitment I was willing to make, the right time in my life. I filled out the application and then told my parents that I was going, and I was going in September, and they were like, oh, okay, wait, what, where, how long? But I think in my mind, I knew I had to like just commit and sign up and just do that before, and not talk about it or overthink it, and just take that plunge. And so in Peace Corps, you don't get to decide where you go. You sort of, if you have any background in a language, they may send you to somewhere where that language is, or if you've studied something, they'll try and find a position that meets up with your skills or interests. So I got a letter in July saying, you're going to meet in Miami and you're going to go to Honduras and you're going to be a health volunteer. So that was it. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever told you this story. So did you know that I also applied for the Peace Corps?
I think I did. Yeah.
And it didn't work out because I ended up in this relationship, and we ended up deciding to go travel instead. But I got placed in Africa, and
Yeah.
I was so excited. And I had to, because it was like, oh my gosh, this whole other world would have opened up for me. And the decision I made was to not go into the Peace Corps and to stay and do this trip around the world for a year. But you kind of always think, what if, right? What if I had taken that plunge like you did and spent 2 years doing the service work, and I would imagine deep personal transformation as well.
Yeah. I mean, the flip side is, yeah, I could have also gone to medical school because I was applying, but it just didn't sit right with me. I just felt like I can't imagine going right on to 4 more years and then residency. And then I just don't know if I want to bad enough to make that leap. That seemed like too big of a try.
Yeah.
And not enough of a true commitment or interest. So yeah, I do. I mean, and then it just kind of propelled me. And I'm not a person who's like a super long-term planner. So I'd never really knew what I wanted my career to be. I think when we would do those aptitude tests, like, I don't know, marine biologist came up. I think I just wasn't maybe like a linear planner about how I wanted my life to shake out. And so it's happened much more organically, I guess, just sort of one thing's just led to another, and it's taken me on a great personal and professional adventure. So anyway, I went to a little town, not a super teeny village, as Kenan remembers. It was a town with electricity, about 3 hours from Tegucigalpa. And I lived with a family and another Peace Corps volunteer who became a dear friend. And yeah, I mean, we had 3 months of training. So we got super great language training, like State Department quality language training. And then they give you sort of training in the sector that you'll be working in. So I got some training in health. And so my main job there was to help the hospital set up their HIV testing and counseling program, because this was right on the border with Nicaragua. And it was a major highway, and there was a lot of sex trafficking and drug trafficking. So this is before Honduras was so dangerous. I mean, it was dangerous, but not dangerous enough that they didn't have Peace Corps. And so, yeah, my job was working with the local public health and hospital folks and setting up counseling and testing and outreach. And at that time, there was still a lot of stigma about HIV. And so we had to do a lot of destigmatizing and setting up the center and reaching out to brothels and bars and truck drivers and stuff like that. I did also do some work in the smaller little communities outside of town on some nutrition and agriculture and water sanitation projects, but that was a little bit less than what I was doing at the hospital. So yeah, it was 2.5 years. It was, I think I just went through stuff in the garage I was telling you guys about and came across a binder of letters that I had written. There were actually emails that I had sent to family and friends, and I couldn't send them all the time, but I would write them kind of like a journal. And then when I would go into the Capitol, I would just send off like 5 journal entries. So my parents kept them, printed them out, and gave them back to me. So I was flipping through those last week. And one of the things I said is, a day feels like a year and a year feels like a day. There were just times of extreme frustration and boredom. And then there were times of just really, really feeling so happy and fulfilled. And one of those was sort of towards the end of our service. Alina and I, who's my friend, we did a girls' sports tournament, which you guys would appreciate if I could have beamed you in for it, because girls didn't really have a chance to play soccer and basketball unless their brothers, would let them, but they were often washing clothes or sweeping or something. So we spent a ton of time and with a couple other volunteers in organizing like buses to go pick up the girls. We made flyers, spread them all over town, got sponsors for like t-shirt uniforms and signs and bands and snacks. And that was like the perfect way to kind of end Peace Corps. I mean, it was like 2 months before the end, but it just felt right. like we were just so happy to be able to give that to girls. And it was a one-time thing. It wasn't a super sophisticated project. It was just a pure joy for them and for us.
But it
you
gave
know,
them a taste.
What's that?
I was going to say, Brinnon, you got to leave your mark, so to speak, right? And
Yeah.
even if it wasn't something that continued, or you never know if it continued after you left, that's something they will never forget.
Right.
It sounds so amazing. And I was just thinking about when I came down to visit you in the Peace Corps, and I'll never forget because I was so poor and I was living in San Francisco, which was so expensive, and I was an assistant teacher, so I was making no money. And I remember our friend Molly, and actually Molly Holly and I were talking about going to visit you. And I remember going, oh gosh, I talking to my family, should I go? I don't have any money. I can't even save money. And I remember my brother saying, it doesn't matter what it costs, you need to go. This is a once in a lifetime visit to see one of your best friends, A, B, to get to go to Honduras and to get a glimpse into this life that has been your life. Like, and I'm such a visual person, so to get to be there with you, like you could tell me stories, show me pictures, but I need to be in it with people, you know. And so that Christmas, my parents gave me a check and it covered the plane ticket, and it, to me, that was a sign like, oh yes, I'm spending all this entire lovely gift, this generous gift of my parents to buy that plane ticket and go see you. And it has not only just for our friendship, I mean, we were already such best close friends, but for me to have experienced and gotten a little glimpse into your life down there was transforming for me. And now when you tell stories and talk about your experience, I get to see it through a different lens, and that's really special to me. So thank you for letting me have a little glimpse into your Peace Corps life.
Well, thank you for coming. I mean, I didn't have a lot of visitors, but it meant so much when I did, because I felt, I mean, this is part of it, right? Is you become quite isolated from your normal life in the US. And granted, everyone after college was parting ways and going off to do different things. But at that time, we didn't have cell phones, and, you know, it was really pretty cut off communication. So it was always nice to have people come and see what the world I was, because 2.5 years is a long time. And to be kind of checked out from reality for that amount of time, or creating my own reality, was just nice to come home and have people that understood where I had been.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, Brinnon, that's a really, like, that's so key what you just said, is that you've experienced this huge transformation and grown so much. And when you come back, and there's a culture shock, right? I imagine when you came back, there's like, oh my gosh, look at all that we have, all the consumption that goes on in the US, all of, going into a grocery store and seeing 10, 20 different kinds of cereal on the cereal aisle. And to really, like, be able to get deep with people. Because I remember when I would travel and have life changing experiences, and people would say, did you have fun? And I'm like, fun? That I wouldn't use that adjective to describe my experience. Like, you really have to really kind of know what someone has gone through, and really to ask those deep questions, like, what was moving for you? What was it like inside of you to experience, the loneliness and and you said, it felt like a day was a year and a year was a day. Like, what was that like? So I think that's great, kind of, that you got to at least see part of that life. And then when Brinnon came back, to share that with her. Like, I get you. I get you at a certain level, even though I wasn't there with you for 2.5 years. Yeah. So, and so, Brinnon, what was it like coming back?
Oh, well, I actually came back at a really hard time. So 9/11 happened while I was there, kind of finishing up. And so they let us come home a month early. They were a little bit worried about security at that time, kind of settled out, but they basically did our close of service a month earlier. So I remember, getting off the airplane, there's only like 2 flights, one to Miami and one to Houston that leave Tegucigalpa. And so a lot of us were on the same flight, and it was just like we landed and we went through customs, and then everyone was on cell phones, which is not how it was when I left. So like Palm Pilots and cell phones were everywhere. And so we all got off and like totally scrappy, right? Like dingy, stretched out Peace Corps clothes, like not probably super healthy. And we just kind of stuck together in an airport and our layer, like, is this where we say goodbye? Like we just went through this collective experience, and here we are dropped back in America. And there was a lot of like America pride, 9/11, and this big sort of patriotic buzz. And a lot of us, I think it's not how it was when we left, and coming back into that after experiencing or living in a country where you see that US influence isn't always a really positive thing in the world, it just felt odd. And I remember sitting with a couple friends because we had long layovers, just like, oh my God, let us go back. Where are we? Like we were excited because there was like a food court and they gave us money to get home and everything. So we were excited to like eat, but then we just were watching people on cell phones and Palm Pilots and like so many people wearing American flags. So it was pretty disorienting. But I got home and my family was really welcoming, and Portland is home. My parents are still there. Your parents are still there. So it felt like the right place to go home to. But the warm showers and everything kind of wore off. And then I'd like go to a grocery store and go down the cereal aisle and just be like, oh my God, I don't even know, and just walk out. But yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. And they kind of knew it, and they prepped us for it, and they gave us a stipend for counseling, and we pretty much all used it. Or my friends and I had no problem using it, but I was lucky to go home to Portland, which was familiar to me. And I had friends like you who were there who would take me on runs in Forest Park and, just coffee shops, things that were like in my soul that I should be doing. And another friend, Clay, who had been in Peace Corps but gotten home about 6 months before me. So she had and she was in Honduras, so she'd kind of warmed it up for me and got me on an ultimate Frisbee team. And so I credit a lot of my adjustment to just good friends who were helping me ease back in and who knew me well enough to know what things would make me feel grounded again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then Brinnon, this experience then led you to deciding to go to grad school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, when I think about that idea, I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I really was interested in public health.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the idea was to go to public health. And so I applied and took the test, whatever, or GRE and not GRE, I forget what it was called. Anyway, I had to take a couple tests.
Yeah.
And then the next big try was deciding whether to go to University of Washington, which is in Seattle and closer to home and more familiar, or going to Baltimore. And I'd never been on the East Coast. And so I decided to try that. They're both great schools. And I just thought, well, why not? I'm at that point was single and decided that I might as well go somewhere where it was going to be tons of opportunities professionally and academically in the global health world. So I remember my brother, I was living with my brother at that point, and he said, you got to go. You have to go to Baltimore. I mean, just do it. You haven't lived on the East Coast. It's a great opportunity. And so I remember calling him when I did my interview and tour, and Hopkins is located in a pretty sketchy area. Kenan, which was worse, my house in Honduras or my house in Baltimore?
Baltimore.
Yeah, I lived in a really ghetto house in a rough part of Baltimore. And I remember calling my brother because in the middle of the interview, I was like, well, I'm just going to step out and get a sandwich, go somewhere. And I walked out and it was like a totally different world again, right? It was inner city Baltimore. just a very different feel. And I called my brother. I was like, I don't know about this. And he was like, yeah, you have to do it. It's a great city. You'll fit right in. You have nothing to lose. So he was the one that kind of gave me the kick again to go try it. It's not gonna hurt.
You gotta love the older brothers, right?
Yeah,
And all
I
their great
know.
advice.
But it's that,
Yeah.
you just, I think I love all of those, the connecting of all of those dots, because you, you tried on a number of things and they stuck and they felt good, and you kept going down that path, and then you met your wonderful husband and two beautiful children later, and a couple
Mhm.
of moves under your belt, but you're settled and living that dream.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that decision to go to Baltimore, it probably would have worked out great in Seattle too, but my grad school community were a lot of people who traveled or worked internationally, and then a lot of the opportunities for research or internships were they just felt right because it was sort of getting back to what I'd been doing in Peace Corps, but I now felt qualified. A little bit underqualified and overwhelmed, but also felt like, no, this is actually what I should be doing because I understand what I'm trying to do, having seen the other side. So,
And Brennan, I mean, a lot of your work, pre-COVID was traveling internationally and doing. So tell us a little bit more about what that work, because it was different but similar to what you were doing in the Peace Corps, right?
yeah, I mean, it's still public health. Public health's just a broad field, but I was always having in mind kind of the hospital where I was working and the communities where I was working as my end point. That's what I had in my mind when I was going to work, is helping serve those communities. But um, yeah, I worked in for a global organization that was affiliated with Hopkins, and I basically was helping design and manage programs for HIV, and family planning and reproductive health. And so I had a portfolio that included East Africa. So I got to go to Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia frequently, and then the Caribbean. So I had like projects in Turks and Caicos and Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. That was the best. That was so nice. But yeah, it was a great time in life. We didn't have kids. Um, and my husband was busy as a resident and fellow, so he was doing his own thing. So it was really but I always felt like distant because I my favorite parts of those trips were like going outside of the capital and going to visit the communities where our projects were working and feeling that connection again. Um, and so so I did that for about 10 years, and then I kind of shifted towards technology innovation for global health. So groups working on devices or diagnostics intended for Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia, and helping them develop the products. And then now I'm working on helping them get them into market. So I work for a company that's sort of like Amazon. We're a marketplace, and we manage logistics and transactions between suppliers and buyers in developing countries.
Wow, that's wonderful, Brennan. That
So
is
less
nice.
travel, even before COVID, it was a little less travel, just because it was hard to do with two little ones.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and as we've all noticed, like the landscape's changed. Is that maybe that will require less travel, although some things do require face to face. But it's different now. It's just a different time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Brennan, thank you from the depths of our heart. I feel like I got to, Kenan and I, and hopefully all of our listeners got a glimpse of what the journey is like, and starting with that idea and deciding you're going to try something on and you're going to take the plunge. And your story just is very representative of really, knowing like, okay, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do in my life, but I'm going to commit to this 2.5 years. And again, it's like I connecting those dots at the end and like seeing like, oh wow, this is, you're where you are today. It started with a decision to go to Honduras and taken many different paths and weaved and morphed. And so thank you for sharing your journey with us today, Brinnon. I
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me. It's always nice to think about that and think about how lucky I've been to have friends and family who are nudging me and who've been really encouraging and supportive and have always welcomed me home with open arms.
Yeah.
Good memory. So thank you, you too.
Yeah. And
You're
thank
an
you to our audience.
inspiration, Brinnon.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're a real inspiration, B, and such an incredible friend. So big hugs to you. Good
Thanks
to
to
see
you.
you.
See you soon.
And thank you to our audience for joining us. And you can check out Twin Chat with S and K on our YouTube channel and Apple Podcast and Spotify and on Instagram and online at riselifecoach.com. So thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.